I'm Amber. My life got flipped upside down when I was just 10. We were living in a rented house back then, me, my mom, and my dad, Tom. Dreams of a home we could call our own were often dinner table talk, but that was before everything went south. Then, it happened. My mom passed away. It was like our family's heart got ripped out, but it seemed like Dad's heart healed way too fast. Enter Sarah, the new woman in Dad's life. She moved in, bringing a storm with her. From day one, Sarah made it clear I wasn't part of her plan. "Dad, why does Sarah always mess with my stuff?" I asked one evening, trying to keep my voice steady. My clothes had been accidentally bleached, and my favorite dishes seemed to taste way too salty lately. "Amber, you gotta stop this nonsense." Dad's voice was harsh, a tone I wasn't used to before Sarah came into the picture. "Sarah's trying her best. You're imagining things." "But I'm not." I protested, but Dad's look told me to drop it. It was the same every time. My words against hers, and hers were the only ones he seemed to hear. Sarah had this way about her, making it look like she was the victim, always. "I don't know what you're talking about, Amber. Maybe you're just not used to someone else being in the house," she'd say with a fake concern that didn't fool me. But it sure fooled Dad. "I'm telling you, she's doing it on purpose." I'd cry out, but Dad wouldn't have any of it. "Enough, Amber. I won't hear another bad word against Sarah. You understand? You're the one causing trouble here. Keep it up, and there'll be consequences." He'd snap back, his patience with me wearing thin. It was like talking to a brick wall, only the brick wall used to tuck me in at night and read me stories. Things got so bad I thought about talking to Grandma about it, but I chickened out. She loved Dad so much, and telling her how he was acting now, how he was choosing Sarah over me, it'd break her heart. So, I kept it all inside, hoping maybe it'd get better, that Dad would see through Sarah's act. But it never happened. Sarah's little accidents became my daily dread. Clothes ruined, food spoiled, and the smallest of my complaints turned into World War III at home. "Dad, my jeans are ruined, look." I showed him one day, holding up a pair of jeans that looked like they'd had a one-on-one with a bottle of bleach. "Looks like you're not taking care of your things, Amber. Maybe if you were more responsible, these things wouldn't happen." Dad dismissed it like it was nothing, Sarah smirking over his shoulder. It was a losing battle, talking to him. My words bounced off him like they were nothing. It hurt, you know? Realizing that the superhero dad I grew up admiring was now firmly on the villain's side. My complaints, my feelings, they meant nothing to him anymore. Sarah had twisted our world around her finger, and I was the only one who seemed to see it. That's how it began, the story of my shattered family. A tale of loss, not just of my mom, but of the father I thought I knew. It's a story I never thought I'd have to tell, but here we are. And trust me, it's only the beginning. Living with Dad and Sarah was like being stuck in a never-ending nightmare. From the moment Sarah stepped into our lives, things took a turn for the worse. But it wasn't just the constant belittling and sabotage that got to me, it was Dad's blind loyalty to her, no matter what. I learned pretty quickly that complaining to Dad was about as useful as talking to a brick wall. Every time I brought up Sarah's antics, he'd brush it off like it was nothing, or worse, accuse me of making things up. "Stop trying to cause trouble, Amber," he'd snap, his voice like ice. So, I learned to keep my mouth shut and bear the brunt of Sarah's cruelty alone. But it wasn't easy, not when every day felt like a battle just to survive in my own home. The only reprieve came when Grandma came to visit. She lived in another city, so her visits were rare, but cherished. Whenever she was around, Sarah turned into a whole different person. Suddenly, she was all smiles, cooking up a storm and dressing me in the fanciest clothes, like I was some kind of princess. It made my stomach churn, seeing her act all sweet when I knew the truth. "Isn't Sarah just the sweetest thing?" Grandma would coo, her eyes sparkling with affection. I'd force a smile, nodding along even though I felt sick to my stomach. "Yeah, she's something all right," I'd mumble, trying to ignore the knot of resentment building in my chest. But behind Grandma's back, Sarah was a whole different story. She'd go from sugar sweet to ice cold in the blink of an eye, her words like daggers aimed straight at my heart. And Dad? He was none the wiser, too blinded by Sarah's charms to see the truth. "Here, Tom, I brought some money for Amber," Grandma would say, handing Dad an envelope stuffed with cash. But guess who never saw a penny of it? That's right, yours truly. Dad and Sarah would pocket the money faster than you could say greedy, spending it on themselves, while I scraped by with whatever scraps they threw my way. And Sarah's cruelty only got worse with time. When Dad wasn't looking, she'd lay into me, leaving bruises hidden under long sleeves and forced smiles. I became an expert at covering up the evidence, hiding the marks with clothes and makeup like it was second nature. "Why do you always wear long sleeves, Amber?" Dad asked one day, eyeing me suspiciously over the breakfast table. "Just like the look, Dad," I lied through my teeth, praying he'd buy it. He grunted in response, turning back to his newspaper without another word. But I could feel the weight of his disappointment like a lead balloon in the pit of my stomach. The days dragged on like a slow-motion train wreck, each one worse than the last. Sarah's cruel jabs and Dad's blind eye left me feeling like I was drowning in a sea of despair. But little did I know, the turning point was lurking just around the corner, ready to shake things up in ways I never imagined. It was a scorching afternoon, the kind where even the air felt heavy with heat. I sat in my desk at school, trying to focus on the lesson while hiding the bruises Sarah had left on my arms. But Mrs. Thompson wasn't one to let things slide. "Amber, why are you wearing long sleeves in this heat?" she asked, her brow furrowed with concern. I shifted uncomfortably in my seat, scrambling for an excuse. I got cold last night," I mumbled, hoping she wouldn't press the issue. But Mrs. Thompson wasn't buying it, not for a second. "Amber, I can see the bruises. You can't keep covering for whoever's hurting you. You need to speak up." My heart hammered in my chest as I searched for a response. But before I could say anything, Mrs. Thompson was already picking up the phone, dialing Dad's number with a determined look in her eye. The tension in the room was palpable as Mrs. Thompson explained the situation to Dad, her voice firm and unwavering. I held my breath, waiting for his reaction. And then, like a whirlwind, Dad stormed into the school, his face twisted with anger. "What the hell is going on, Amber?" he demanded, his voice echoing through the hallway. I tried to explain, to make him see the truth, but he wouldn't listen. Instead, he grabbed me roughly by the arm and dragged me out of the school, his grip like a vice. We drove home in silence, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. When we finally arrived, Sarah was waiting for us, her expression a mix of curiosity and disdain. Well, what do we have here?" she sneered, her eyes flicking over me with disdain. Dad didn't waste any time. He launched into a tirade, accusing me of embarrassing him and making up lies about our family. I tried to defend myself, to make him understand, but it was like talking to a brick wall. "You're a disgrace, Amber," he spat, his words like a slap in the face. Alone in my room, tears streaming down my cheeks, I realized something. I couldn't rely on them anymore. I had to stand up for myself, to find the strength to break free from their toxic grasp. After a few hours of me being locked away in my room, Dad came knocking, his tone unusually calm but still laced with a cold sternness. "Amber, we need to talk. Now." I hesitated but knew better than to keep him waiting. Dragging myself out of bed, I found Sarah and Dad sitting at the dining table, their expressions stern and unwelcoming. "Sit down," Dad commanded, pointing to the empty chair opposite them. I obeyed, my heart sinking as I prepared myself for whatever was coming next. Dad cleared his throat, his gaze fixed on me like I was some sort of defendant in court. "Your stepmom and I have been talking. We're sick and tired of your stories and accusations. It's got to stop, Amber." Sarah chimed in, her voice dripping with fake concern. "We only want what's best for you, dear. But spreading lies and trying to tear this family apart is not the way. Dad's voice hardened. If you keep this up, telling these tall tales about Sarah, there's only one way this is going to end. We'll have no choice but to send you away. To an orphanage. The word hit me like a ton of bricks. Orphanage? Were they serious? My own family sending me away because I was a problem? Think about your behavior, Amber. This is your last warning, Dad added before dismissing me with a wave of his hand. Go to your room. Stunned and defeated, I retreated back to my room, their words echoing in my mind. The threat of being sent away was terrifying, yet it also ignited something in me, a determination not to let them break me, no matter what. The echo of my heart pounding was the only sound filling my ears as I dialed Grandma's number. The phone felt slippery in my sweat-dampened palms, a lifeline in the midst of the storm that had become my life. When she answered, her voice was like a beacon in the darkness. Grandma, it's me, Amber. I stammered out, trying to keep my voice steady. I need your help. What's wrong, dear? Her voice was laced with concern, cutting through the fear that had wrapped itself around me. Through choked sobs, I laid bare the truth of my existence under Dad and Sarah's roof. The hidden bruises, the whispered threats, their plan to discard me like an unwanted toy to an orphanage. Grandma's response was swift and decisive. Stay put, Amber. I'm on my way. Hours later, she was at our door, her presence commanding the room like a storm. Dad tried to block her path, puffing up in a display of authority he hadn't earned. You can't just take her, Mom. I'm her father, for God's sake. Grandma's gaze was steely, unflinching. And you've failed her, Tom. I won't let you destroy her life. Sarah, ever the snake, tried to slither in with her venom. She's making it all up. It's all attention-seeking. I've seen the bruises, Sarah. Your act doesn't fool me, Grandma countered with a glare that could freeze hell over. The journey to Grandma's house was silent, a shared quiet that spoke volumes. The relief of escaping that house was a balm to my soul, yet fear of what lay ahead gnawed at the edges of my newfound freedom. Grandma's home was a stark contrast to the coldness I had come to associate with family. Warmth enveloped me, not just from the crackling fireplace, but from the love that seemed to permeate every inch of the space. Amber, you're safe here. You always will be, Grandma said as she handed me a cup of tea, her eyes softening. I don't know how to thank you, I whispered, the warmth of the cup seeping into my hands. Just be yourself, dear. That's all I've ever wanted for you. Days turned into weeks, and Grandma's house became a sanctuary. She became my mentor, teaching me life skills that were about more than just surviving, they were about thriving. We explored the world together, visiting places I had only dreamed of. Each trip was an adventure, a chance to see the world through eyes unclouded by pain. On my 16th birthday, Grandma handed me a beautifully wrapped package. Inside was a professional camera, sleek and powerful. Your eyes see the world in a unique way, Amber. Capture it, share it, live it. Photography wasn't just a hobby, it was a lifeline. It gave me purpose, a sense of identity that I had lost in the shadows of my past. Look at this, Grandma, I'd say, showing her the photos I had taken. Each image was a piece of my soul, a step on the journey of healing. You have a gift, Amber. Never let it go, she'd reply, her pride in me shining brighter than any camera flash. I had spent so long under Grandma's care that I had all but forgotten about the existence of my father and stepmother. They had never bothered to call me, check up on me, or even acknowledge my birthday or holidays. And truth be told, I didn't miss them one bit. Grandma was all I needed, her love and support sustaining me through even the darkest of times. But just when I thought things were finally looking up, fate had other plans in store. It was a crisp autumn morning when Grandma took ill. At first, it seemed like nothing more than a common cold, but as the days wore on, her condition worsened. The once vibrant woman I knew was reduced to a shadow of her former self, her laughter replaced by labored breaths and pain-filled eyes. I did everything I could to help her, fetching medicine, cooking her favorite meals, but it was like trying to hold back the tide with my bare hands. The inevitable was drawing closer with each passing day, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. One evening, as I sat by her bedside, holding her frail hand in mine, she turned to me with a look of sadness in her eyes. "Amber, there's something I need to tell you," she rasped, her voice barely a whisper. I leaned in closer, my heart pounding in my chest. "What is it, Grandma? You can tell me anything." She took a shaky breath, her grip on my hand tightening. "I'm not going to be around much longer, dear. But I want you to know that I'm proud of you. You've grown into such a strong, independent woman, and I know you're going to do great things." Tears welled up in my eyes as I squeezed her hand tighter. "I don't know what I'm going to do without you, Grandma. You've always been there for me, through thick and thin." She smiled weakly, her eyes brimming with love. "You'll always have me in your heart, Amber. And remember, you're never alone as long as you have the memories we've shared." That night, as I lay in bed, listening to the steady rhythm of Grandma's breathing, I couldn't help but feel a sense of loss creeping over me. She had been my anchor in a sea of uncertainty, and now I was adrift once again, left to navigate the stormy waters of life on my own. The loss of Grandma left a gaping void in my heart, a chasm of grief that threatened to swallow me whole. Her absence echoed through the halls of her house, haunting me with memories of happier times. But amidst the sorrow, a sense of determination burned within me like a smoldering ember, urging me to take control of my own destiny. As I stood by Grandma's graveside, surrounded by wilted flowers and tear-stained faces, I couldn't shake the feeling of disbelief that Dad and Sarah had the audacity to show up. Their presence was like salt in an open wound, a painful reminder of the fractured relationship we shared. Sarah's words cut through the somber silence like a knife, her tone dripping with venom as she demanded I vacate Grandma's house. My jaw clenched with anger, but beneath the rage, there was a flicker of amusement. Did they really think they could just waltz in and claim what was rightfully mine? A bitter laugh escaped my lips, drawing puzzled glances from Dad and Sarah. "You two really are something else," I said, my voice laced with sarcasm. "You think you can just kick me out of Grandma's house and take everything for yourselves?" Dad's eyes narrowed, his fists clenching at his sides. "It's not like that, Amber. We just want what's best for you." "What's best for me?" I scoffed, incredulous. "You mean what's best for you?" Sarah's face twisted with indignation, but before she could retort, I delivered the final blow. "You know what's funny? Grandma saw right through you too. That's why she left the house and $500,000 to me." But the drama didn't end there. Dad's initial shock turned to joy. He began shouting about how, as my guardian, he would control my inheritance. Sarah's eyes gleamed with anticipation as she talked about how they'd spend my money. I couldn't help but laugh at their ignorance. "You two really are clueless," I said, shaking my head. "You think you can control me? Well, guess what? I turned 18 a month ago. I'm in charge now, and you're not getting a penny." The color drained from their faces as the reality of their situation dawned on them. Dad's attempts to regain control were feeble at best, his protests falling on deaf ears as I stood my ground. "You can't do this to us, Amber," Dad pleaded, his voice tinged with desperation. I met his gaze with steely resolve. "I'm not doing anything to you, Dad. You did this to yourselves." And with that, I showed them the door, cutting ties with them once and for all. As they slunk away, defeated, I felt a sense of liberation wash over me. For the first time in my life, I was truly free, free from their manipulation, free from their cruelty, free to live my life on my own terms. The house felt empty, but it was a good kind of emptiness, like a blank canvas ready for a new painting. I knew I had a lot of work ahead of me, but for the first time, I felt like I was truly in control of my life. I decided to start fresh, to renovate the house and make it my own. The first order of business was to clear out all the old furniture and repaint the walls. I called up a friend, Jamie, who was handy with renovations. Hey, Jamie, you busy this weekend? I asked when she picked up the phone. Depends, what's up? Jamie replied, her interest piqued. I'm redoing the house. Need some help painting and moving stuff. Plus, I could really use the company, I said, hoping she'd say yes. You had me at redoing the house. I'm in. Need to escape my own chaos here, Jamie said with a laugh. Jamie came over the next day, armed with paintbrushes, rollers, and a playlist that could keep us motivated for hours. We started in the living room, deciding on a bright, cheerful color to replace the dull beige that had been there for years. As we painted, Jamie turned to me, a mischievous glint in her eye. So, this house is all yours now, huh? Planning any wild parties? I laughed, dipping my roller back into the paint. Wild parties? With my 2 friends? Please, we'd be asleep by 10. Speak for yourself. I'm a party animal, Jamie protested, flicking a bit of paint my way. The day turned into evening, and before we knew it, the room had transformed. The new color made the space feel warm and inviting, a reflection of the new start I was craving. The following weeks were a blur of activity. I fixed up the kitchen, updated the bathroom, and even started a small garden in the backyard. The house began to feel like a home, a place where I could heal and grow. One evening, as I sat on the newly installed deck, admiring the sunset, my neighbor, Mr. Henderson, called out from over the fence. Place is looking good, Amber. You've been working hard. Thanks, Mr. Henderson. It's been a lot of work, but it's worth it, I replied, grateful for the acknowledgement. Need any help with that garden? Got some tomato plants that need a home, he offered, his voice friendly and warm. I'd love that, thank you, I said, touched by his kindness. It felt good to be part of a community, to connect with people who genuinely cared. As the days passed, I threw myself into making the house my sanctuary. I hung photos of my adventures with Grandma, filled bookshelves with my favorite novels, and turned one of the spare rooms into a photography studio. My passion for photography, sparked by the camera Grandma had given me, had grown into a full-blown hobby. One afternoon, while sorting through some old boxes in the attic, I stumbled upon a collection of Grandma's journals. Curious, I opened one and began to read. Her words were a window into her soul, full of wisdom, love, and a touch of sass. I realized then that, even in her absence, Grandma was still guiding me, still a part of my journey. It's been a whole decade since I've turned the page on what was a pretty rocky chapter of my life. At 28, things are looking up. I'm killing it as a lawyer in one of those high-flying firms, cruising around in a car that's as sleek as they come, surrounded by a squad of mates who are more like family, and yeah, there's this guy I'm seeing. Life in Grandma's old place has been nothing short of a blessing. Then, out of nowhere, my dad rings up. Haven't heard a peep from him in 10 years, and suddenly, here he is, popping up like a bad penny. Hey, Amber, it's me. He starts, his voice all shaky. I need your help. I'm like, who is this again, knowing full well who's on the other end. It's your dad. Listen, me and Sarah, we're in deep. Debt's up to our eyeballs. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't serious. I need money, kiddo. I couldn't help but laugh, the sound bitter even to my own ears. My dad, you say? Funny, I don't recall having a father. Especially not one who'd dump his kid and then show up a decade later with his hand out. He tries to cut in, but I'm not having any of it. No, you listen. You remember how you and your wife treated me? Threw me out like I was nothing when Grandma passed? You made your bed, now, you get to lie in it. There's a desperate edge to his voice now. Please, I'm begging you. We got nowhere else to turn. That hit a nerve, not gonna lie. For a split second, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then I remembered all the nights I spent in that house, feeling like an outsider. The memory of their faces when they found out Grandma left everything to me, not a shred of concern for me, just greed. So, I laid it down for him, clear as day. Not my circus, not my monkeys. You were never there for me when I needed you. Now, you want my help? Forget it. I won't give you a cent. And with that, I hung up, the finality of the click echoing through the silent room. It was harsh, maybe, but so were the lessons I learned growing up. Life taught me you can't expect to harvest where you haven't sown. So, I picked myself up, went out to meet my boyfriend and friends for dinner, and didn't look back. Life's too short for regrets, especially about people who only remember you exist when they need something.